topic, all about Judaism while standing on one leg. Here we go, make this guy bigger and bigger. All right, you get the idea, standing on one leg. So knowing the way I talk and so on, it's going to take longer than one leg. You may need both legs, but I will explain the reference. Many of you may know it already. Let me just put this aside. So there's people watching us, and we welcome, we have some new people here. You want to introduce yourselves? Yeah. Rita. Oh, welcome, welcome. Good. And San Fernando Valley. Okay, and oh, here, yeah.
Yeah, I'm David Portoli. Originally, I'm from Iran.
Ah.
Yeah.
Okay. Okay. All right. Good. So now I got my picture. So now I'm going to put up my my outline. Shrink this picture down so it's out of my way. Okay. So actually, I don't even need myself. I think I know who I am. Hold on. What's this one doing? Hold on. What did that just do? Trying to get this out of my screen. Okay, that's good. Okay, very good. So I said I would do this talk. I want to do a series on it for us. I said, you know, if you had never had anything Jewish, or you went to yeshiva, or anywhere in between, University of Judaism, or any formal programs, still always good to know what we're about. So that is my purpose here in this series, and that'll take us through the summer into the high holidays. So we'll be ready for the high holidays because we'll know what we're about, so we can enjoy it. Okay, we'll get together. So I always want to find an outline. I found a beautiful excerpt from Encyclopedia Britannica, which was available. You have to know where to look for these things. And I said, okay, I'll use this as my outline, build on it. So where you see the red, in red, that's where I just took some of their high points to keep in mind. You may have heard this story about the rabbi. No, it was a story about a minister who used to give very terrible sermons. Very terrible sermons. Every Sunday morning, got up and gave a terrible sermon. Finally, the board got to him and says, look, it's terrible. It makes no sense. What you say, it doesn't connect. Following Sunday, beautiful sermon, beautiful Sunday, and the sermon after that, Sunday after that, right? All of a sudden, perfect sermons, wonderful, makes sense, beautiful language, everything. And so they tell the minister, say, you know what, it's really good, except how come you're going like this every 5 seconds? He says, well, that's where I'm begin quote, end quote, begin quote, end quote, begin quote, end quote. Right? So he's copying, right? So this is why I put, where I have borrowed, I put in red quotes, red. Okay, so, where I find something good. So the editor of this was Salo Wittmer Baron, author of the great work on the social history of the Jewish people. It's like about almost 20 volumes. So the guy knows what he's writing about. And they brought in some other people, significant people in this. So I said, okay, we're going to start out, you need a reading list. You can't just take my word for it. So I said, well, are there some reading lists for beginners? So I found and I'll post this so anybody who wants can get this here. My Jewish Learning, 10 Best Introduction to Judaism books. For if you want to get all the key source books in Judaism, historic Judaism, the website Sefaria. And if you want to create your own Jewish library, here's the top 100 Jewish books. Of course, if you don't have enough bookshelf, most of these books are available to download online. Some may be even free or very nominal costs. Or if you don't want to read, you can watch some very beautiful videos in Bimbam, Judaism 101, Unpacked Education, JewBelong.com. Some have very interesting videos. So I will go, my opening, the guy standing on one leg. It's a famous story. Maser b'nochri echad. There's a Gentile, he comes before Shammai, the great teacher of his day, and says, convert me on condition that you teach me the entire Torah while I stand on one foot. Of course, guy gets upset, takes his builder's cubits, architect's rod, measuring rod, smashes the guy on the head, says, go away, don't talk to me. So the same guy then came to Hillel. He says, okay, he converted. How do you convert him? He says, that which is hateful to you, don't do to another. Don't do to the other guy. That's Torah Kula, all the Torah. Some people say that's all the Torah, that's all there is to it. Then he adds just one line. Va'idach pirusha. The rest of it is the explanation. Zil, gemir, go and learn. In other words, there is no one leg. There is no one leg. I give you one thing, it's a fake. You have to study in depth. But because he said it the way he said it, so it drew in the stranger, whereas the whipping rod of Shammai wasn't very effective. So let's look. What can we do with one leg? Okay. Well, so today I'm going to focus, or start at least, introduction, with what is the Jewish triumvirate. Maybe that's not a good word. I was going to say Trinity. That's not a very good word in Jewish sources either. Trifecta maybe is a better word. Jewish trifecta. You got, you know the song, Ye Yisrael, Ye Yisrael, right? It's a quotation attributed to Kabbalistic sources. Yisrael v'oraita v'kudsha brichu chadhu. The Jewish people, the Torah, and the Holy One are one. I mean, they're one. Identical? No, but they're intertwined, right? Intertwined. You can't have one without the other. Why do we say that? Usually, discussions on religion want to start with why believe? Or what do we believe? So, one of the great, and Maimonides actually starts his teachings that way, but one of the great teachers of the Middle Ages, Rabbi Yehuda Levi, writes a philosophical novel, and basically the introduction of the novel is this. It's based on the story of a king in what is now the area of Crimea, southern Ukraine, somewhere in that area. And he wants to know what's the best religion. He goes shopping around. He goes, gets a philosopher, he gets a Christian minister, he gets a Muslim Qadi. And the philosopher, he hears the guy going back and forth, and basically anything the philosopher says, he could undo. All arguments can be turned on their head. So that didn't satisfy him. He listens to the Christian minister, and he asks the Christian, well, how do you know about God and so on? Well, the Bible says it, and the children of Israel taught us this. Then he goes to the Muslim Qadi, and says, this is what happened, and this is what happened, this is what happened to the children of Israel. So who are these children of Israel? Everybody says they're based on children of Israel. So he goes and he says, nobody likes Jews, children of Israel. Nobody wants to be with them. Let me find out. Nobody likes them. Nobody respects them, but everybody quotes them. So he goes to them, and Rabbi starts giving the whole history of the Jewish people, starting with Abraham and his two kids, and then he had Isaac, and going on and on and on and on. They were slaves. And he said, wait, I want to know, why is there God? What is the foundation of the universe? He give me this story of a bunch of people running around. He says, no. Understand that when one person claims to have the truth, I have no way to validate it. When you get 600,000 people walking in the middle of a desert, they know what they see, and they tell their children. In other words, it is the authority for Judaism comes out of the people, the teachings, the experience of the people, the teachings of the people, and passing on of the generations. Later on in modern times, Rabbi Mordechai Kaplan, taking a very philosophical, abstract view, also puts the people. It is out of the people that this religion arises. It is this experience, some kind of experience out of the people. It's the collective experience. And so that's the people become core, central to the idea of Judaism, which makes us very different from other religions. In fact, if you look in the Bible, I challenge you to find the word religion in the entire Bible. It doesn't exist. There is, in the book of Esther, the word dat, which is the word that we tend to use to explain what we are to other peoples. The word dati, one who observed Judaism. But that's a Persian word. It's not a Jewish word. It's a Persian word. It's in the book of Esther. Datahem shano. Their laws are not our laws. It's Haman who tells us this, not we say it. Haman says it. So the word religion itself, a Latin word from binding, tying. This is what ties us to God, right? So you cannot use that word because we are older than the concept of religion. So it is a religion in the sense we have systems and beliefs, but it's also the totality of the creation of the Jewish people, right? There's some experience of the Jewish people that has a mission from the divine, and that mission is embodied in the Torah in its manifest meanings, and that is the core. Let's say it. That's at the core. It puts us very distinct then. Okay, still working? Okay, let's see. Let me know. Okay. That's very distinct from Christianity and Islam, as well as pure philosophy, because they're claiming that what they have is for all humanity, but all humanity must accept it. And our claim is that the faith part, that's open to all humanity, accept or not accept. What is uniquely ours is our path, which is halakha, observance, the kinds of Jewish observance, and our method, which is Torah. Not just a book, and that's what it is, the method of examining and understanding it. So that's where we put. So we have to start with the Jewish people. Okay, you ever hear this line, how out of God to choose the Jews? It was a famous English writer, and then another Jewish writer answered back, it's not odd the Jews chose God. Right? God chose us, did we choose God? Right? Somewhere in here, we have this sense, Asher b'charbanu mikol ha'amim. We say it in the Shema, before the Shema. Asher b'char amo Yisrael be'ahava. In the evening, in the day, Ohev amo Yisrael, loves his people Israel. Deuteronomy, you can see as a source text. People consecrated the Lord, his treasured people. You were the smallest of the people, but God loved you and made an oath kept with your fathers and rescued you from bondage, from the power of Pharaoh, king of Egypt, right? Deuteronomy makes it explicit, right? So we're coming at why then would we base a religion on a people then, and not on something that we'd want to put on the entire world? So the Jews, if you look back at the Bible, you'll see it starts with all humanity. It starts with all humanity. Other ancient texts start with the focus of our people are the first peoples. Everybody else is descended from something else. Here we have all humanity, right? You go back, this concept. But all humanity is a difficult entity, all humanity. You try with Adam, it doesn't work. Okay. All right, there we go. Nobody else has got microphones on? Okay. You get the story. Right? So humanity as a whole is unwieldy. And next, I'll go to the center. Move this with me. Okay. Okay, I'm good to go. All right. Okay, we're live. We're live again. Yeah, I know. Okay, matonished. Okay. So what we're looking for is God is frustrated with humanity and it's going to work small and build his way up. See, right? That's the principle of the book of Genesis. Start with Abraham, covenant with Abraham, Brit Ben Betarim, Later on, they had Brit Milah, which is now carried on, so that each child born into the Jewish community is into that covenant. We have the Brit at Sinai with Torah, so that all future generations in Jewish perspective are into that covenant. And so now we become the go-to person between God and humanity as a whole. And that's the function. That's the purpose. And we have a series of obligations, the idea of mitzvot, presuming commander, mitzvah being commanded, the sense of an obligation. All right, we have that. So I'm going to gloss over the idea of question, the chosen people. What do we mean by chosen? That can be a problematic term. We know chosen people actually doesn't exist as a noun in Hebrew sources. There's an adjective, there's a verb in God's actions in Jewish sources, but not as a noun. What means that? What does that mean when it doesn't exist as a noun, the chosen people? That itself is actually not an entity in Jewish thought. We'll go back to that. It's a little bit complicated. But you also know this quote in Fiddler on the Roof, right? Maybe it's time to choose somebody else, right? Right. Whether God chose us or history chose us, somehow we are always in the center. That has been, even when we were down to, after the Holocaust, down to 12 million Jews, in the Middle Ages down to maybe 2 million Jews, somehow we still were in the center of at least Western civilization, between the Christian and the Muslim civilizations. And somehow we got ourselves stuck into world civilization also. So, what's the function then in this for the people? The word Mamlechet Kohanim, the Bible repeats over and over again. To be a Jew is to be aware of being part of Mamlechet Kohanim, a community of priests, Goy Kadosh, a nation living in holiness, set aside. All right? Doesn't mean that we are saints, Mother Teresa saints. Doesn't mean that. Doesn't mean that we are good. Is that we have this obligation to act as such. We may fall and fail at it. That's a different story. But that is the theme that's picked up through the Bible, repeated into all Jewish sources. So, kingdom of priests functioning within humanity, and then it's given full expression in Isaiah, the end half of Isaiah. Atem Edai, you are my witnesses. This is the purpose of the Jewish people. You are my witnesses, right? Jehovah's Witnesses says Adonai. Jehovah is Adonai. That's where it's come from. We are the Jehovah's Witnesses. V'avdi, you're my servant. Shebachaticha. It's not like a Jew wants to be a Jew. He's plucked out for a task to serve. All right? Listen, you're drafted into it. And it continues, Ani Adonai karaticha b'tzedek. I have called you in righteousness. V'chazek biadcha. I hold your hand. I shape you, and I give you this Brit Am, a covenant of the peoples, or maybe eternal covenant, l'or goyim, light to the nations. Or goyim. For what function? Lifkoach einayim ivrot, l'tzim masgei asir mebeit keli yoshev choshech. You shall open the eyes deprived of light, rescuing prisoners from confinement, from the dungeon, those who sit in darkness. It doesn't mean you're going to be the revolutionary overthrowing world governments, although many Jews have done that. Right? Karl Marx, renegade, but Trotsky. But not in that sense, but in the sense of bringing truth, or bringing understanding, or bringing wisdom to the world. That's the function in our behavior. Do we do it? That's a different story. Yeah. Yeah, but without the gun. Is it with the gun or without the gun?
Yeah,
Okay.
well, yeah. I don't think Marx ever brought a gun to the fight.
No, Mao did. Mao said the revolution comes at the end of a gun.
Yeah,
Right.
same Marx.
Yeah.
But bringing enlightenment and also putting people's thought as to what is unjust is revolutionary.
It is part. It is part of one. It was one of multiple elements. It's the justice in society. It's let me get rid of this. What happened here? Okay, we'll get this out of the way. It is also bringing responsibility, discipline, lifestyle, right? But you can't impose it. Your job is not to impose it. Your job is to act in such a way. You know, I cannot impose kashrut on anyone, right? I cannot impose our Shabbat disciplines on anyone. I can talk about fighting for people getting out of jail, you know, something like that. Yeah. But again, which part? In law, whatever is the political route, sometimes it does require action, physical action. Yeah, we recognize that. But it's not the only part of it. The huge elements of Judaism have nothing to do with justice. They have to do with personal discipline, personal development. I cannot impose it on anybody. Other religions impose. I don't impose my path. That's not the goal. Yeah. I can't even impose it on my fellow Jews. So I'm not gonna. No, my job is not to teach Torah. My job is to live in such a life that a person sees me and says, there's something behind it. There's something behind it. And so when a Jew behaves in a way that is honorable, noble, decent, and is visibly as a Jew, that is considered Kiddush Hashem, sanctifying God's name in public, which is one of the obligations of a Jew, to act in such a way that when somebody sees a Jew, he says, there's something behind his teachings of value. To go out in public with a shtreimel and kapota and do something that is horrible is a chilul Hashem, disgrace of God's name. Right? So that's undoing what we should be doing as a Jew. Right? So that's a very important point. Very important point. Right? To our children, yeah. Right. No, I have no obligation to teach. That's specific to us. I can engage, I can discuss. People want to come, I can make stuff available. I'm not going to do what the Catholic Church would do, which would be that I control the printing presses and I say what may be printed, what may not be printed. All right? Because I don't have that obligation. Or like the Sultan of medieval Turkey, when the printing presses came out and said that we will not print any books, right? I'm not going to control that information.
But the Catholic Church, like they're putting out incorrect stuff. You're putting out correct stuff.
No, they have our stuff, they have their stuff. I'm just not going to, here's a bookstore, you want to buy it, buy it. They're going to restrict you. They're going to restrict you. Okay, that would be the correct way. So, we have this, as I say, it's the first foundation in the Bible. Then what happens is then it is developed under the rabbis, what we call Pharisaic Judaism, Rabbinic Judaism, and down to our day. Yeah, yeah.
What time the Pharisees had born after the weeks?
What say again?
The Pharisaic movement.
Yeah, as a movement is. As a specific movement is somewhere around the time, we can see the roots already in the time of the Maccabees, coming to fruition, some indications, but really getting a foothold with the time of the introduction of the Romans. That's where it's very clear. They become the dominant force, yeah. But the elements under which the Pharisees develop are there already with the return from the exile. We now have the school of interpreters beginning, Ezra and the Sophrim. So they're not only putting the text, but they're starting to create what is going to be the traditions, because the text is very skimpy, and we're creating paths for an entire people. So they're beginning this process. That goes into Jewish history. So, Jews again as a people, or la goyim, but not in the sense of controlling. Being there, being visible, not imposing. The non-Jew, from the Jewish perspective, has a path to God. Classic Jewish perspective, Sheva Mitzvot B'nai Noach, the 7 commands of Noach. And if you ever look at the traditional list, They're predominantly moral and ethical. The only one that is specifically religious about not defaming God, it was not denouncing the concept of God, but nothing about observing God or accepting God. Unless it's in the negative. So it is a universal code, predominantly a moral code. That would be imposed, that assumed that all humanity has accepted that. That there's a universal decency, universal humanity. We would expect all humanity to live up to it. So there's the idea of the tzadikei umot haolam yesh lehem chelek b'olam haba. Those who are righteous among all the nations have a place in the world to come. I don't have a lock on heaven. I get a free pass because I'm Jewish, but the other guys have it. They have it in also. I don't, right? Just live in a proper life and don't kill me. That's the other category, right? Yeah. Well, yeah, okay. Don't go out of your way to get rid of me. Yeah. That's why, for example, Yad Vashem, you have a category, tzadikei umot haolam, the righteous of all the nations, those who went out of their way to save Jews during the Holocaust. All right? That's from that period. Okay. So who is a Jew? Who is a Jew? Now we come into the, okay, so we got the Jewish people, centrality of Jewish people in this thinking. So now who is a Jew? Right? The Torah reading today talked about the ger ke'ezrach, one law for the stranger. The ezrach is defined as one who is born among you from Jewish ancestry or Israelite ancestry, and the ger, one who has come and chosen to dwell among you. And it is not yet the full idea of convert as we have it, but it is the basis conversion, which one comes in from the outside, accepts fully all the obligations, both the privileges and the penalties, right? All of that. So that is one way that the non-Jew would be absorbed into the totality by choosing to come in. Probably through marriage may have been the early way, and still a very common path. Probably the cause might be the idea of citizenship, U.S. citizenship, passed on by birth or by naturalization. That may be the closest example. You cannot speak of Jews as a race because you've had entire communities come into the Jewish peoples, possibly sometimes entire peoples, ethnic groups coming in. But there's enough of common DNA among Jews worldwide to indicate a common shared history that goes back 2,500 years to the Middle East without being, let's say, exclusive and rejectionist. Right? There's right? Just like we may talk about family members. Members of a family descended from some common ancestor, but adding into it people who've come into the family, the wives, the sons, however the marriage may be, or adoption, or this close old friend of the family just becomes absorbed into the family. That may be the best kind of comparison. Right? So that is how we have the Jewish people. Okay. Other thoughts that go with it. We've got a language. Then. If you have a people, what do you have that holds a people together? A language. How does people keep itself together over thousands of miles, over 2,000 centuries, especially when they're no longer gathered as one coherent group in the land of Israel, actually 2,500 years, actually. So language, very essential in conveying the values and the teachings. Right? So Hebrew gets a mystical status. It is the language upon which the universe is built. By the way, I think it's probably similar in Islam, where it's influenced from Jewish sources, Arabic. So over the centuries, though, what's the benefit? A Jew could comprehend the Bible. He could comprehend Mishnaic Hebrew from 1,000 years before. He certainly could comprehend the written version. And he could study and pray in that same language. And he could conduct business with a Jew from 1,000 miles away or more, from any other part of the globe. So now Christians had a common language with Latin. Muslims had a common language with Arabic. The problem was that it stopped at the border between the two civilizations. The Jew was able to go back and forth, right? This common language. Okay, now I skip these. Okay, so we have the oddity that everywhere Jews were multilingual as a result. They used the Hebrew and a little bit of the Aramaic still in worship. Not necessarily spoken Hebrew, but Jews could get by because they vocalized the Hebrew as they prayed and worshiped, different pronunciations. But you go, a Jew from Yemen goes to Poland, and you have trouble with the oi and the e, and the Yemenite would have problem with the ah. But eventually they would figure it out. Right? That was possible. Then, of course, the local language. Every Jew had the local language. In Poland, the Jews spoke Yiddish, they spoke Polish or Ukrainian. And then they always had a patois of their own. So it would be a Judeo-hyphen, that's how it would be described today. Judeo-Spanish, Ladino, Judeo-German, the Yiddish, Judeo-Persian, Jidi. I think I've seen that used. Judeo-Jidi? Yeah, there we go. Arabic, Arabiya, Yahudiya, right? And that would often preserve the language of the natives better than the natives' language. Right? So Yiddish, people who study medieval German go to Yiddish for the construction. That's an example. Okay, but now we will think of it. One of the greatest linguistic feats of all times, one of the greatest linguistic feats of all times, has to be the rebirth of Hebrew from what was mostly a written and read text for business, for worship, for study, and as I say, also contracts and so be written, into an actively used modern language. And it was done within the course of a few decades. Primarily the work of one lunatic by the name of Eliezer ben Yehuda, said, we're coming back to a land of Israel, this is the end of the 19th century, and we need our language back. And this is a period where people are rediscovering their original languages, going back to their original languages. We got to get back to our root language. This is what we have in common. And then you come in, and I had the pleasure of meeting one of his sons who had written one of the pocket dictionaries that was very popular, the Yehuda Weinstein Dictionary. If any of you were students of Hebrew, you all had to rely on that when you were studying. And a simple thing like, you know, a bowl of cereal. What are you going to do for a bowl of cereal? What are you going to do for a spoon, a cup, fork? You know, you have to think through and go through all these sources because nobody's done this. And that, by the way, till today, you have a committee on the language of Hebrew, inventing words for new situations. So what's a telephone? Besides telephone in Hebrew. And my Hebrew students, sachrachok, long distance talking. Yeah, telephone, yeah, I know, because they use Hebrew, that's it. But that's the intent. A helicopter. No, let's find something closer. Masok. Masok means something that can go down suddenly, right? Or up and down suddenly. A drone. A hafan, from the word merachef, floating, fluttering. Okay, right. So you have to. This is within. But most of this was done the end of the 19th century, beginning of the 20th century. So by the time you have these settlements after the Balfour Declaration, they're actively using Hebrew. That's one of the great miracles. The Irish tried. Gaelic is still spoken in some parts of Ireland, but it's not actively used in Ireland. English is. Right? I don't know who else was able to resurrect an unused language. Right? Very right.
Any group of the Jewish communities that kept the Hebrew as a central language?
As a spoken language, no. Also, there was as written, yes, yeah. And so documents are written, yeah. The reason I wouldn't use it as a spoken language was that it's the language of the sacred. And so you wouldn't want to sully your mouth with everyday business or ordinary things, right? So that was the restraint. I mean, yeah. Except that in the case of Latin, actually, very few people knew Latin, right? They knew the devolution of Latin into its French or Spanish and so on, but the Latin they didn't know. But so only a few, right? So only very few could deal with Latin. Every Jew could deal with Hebrew. Every Jew, because the education in Hebrew was started at the age of 3. To read at the age of 3. Till today, among Yemenite Jews, the Torah reading, the Aramaic Aramaic. The kid has no idea what he's reading. It's Aramaic, read by like 4 or 5-year-old kid, with the notes and everything. Yeah, yeah.
I was going to say to you is that if you grew up with an English primary system throughout, you had to learn Latin. Well, back in the day,
Yeah.
when I was in school,
Yeah.
we had to learn Latin.
Yeah, but that's modern times, right? Because you have the spread of public education.
Right.
But when the church was primary before the Roman Reformation, yeah, I know, because it was foundations of civilization. Yeah, yeah. But who educated before modern times? Who educated who? Very few in Europe. In Muslim countries, there was a greater obligation to learn scriptures, but that was in the Arabic. But Christian Latin was not actively used, right? Go ahead.
My mother-in-law, my Ima, I used to call her Ima.
Yeah.
But my nephew, Moshe, he forgot himself. He started talking to her in Hebrew because he was born in Israel. So she stopped and she said, Meishalem, my king, I'm going to translate it. Talk, red to me Yiddish, if verstehe nicht Kagoyish, which was very funny. He forgot himself and he was talking to her in Hebrew. So she stopped and she said, Meishalem, which is Moses, my child, talk to me in Yiddish. I don't understand Goyish because he was talking Hebrew.
Gentile language. Oh my gosh. Oh, yeah. It's very interesting. Even in the Haredi quarters, where they looked upon the revival of Hebrew as a spoken language as verboten, matonished, you don't, they all speak Hebrew very well. And they use it actually now as much as Yiddish. It was very interesting because they were dead set against it. And I'm just going to wrap up. If you've got
And also girls didn't go to school,
yeah.
Girls
So now in the New World, it's, with the revival of Hebrew as a language. Now, so that is something, as I say, unique. So now we have a people, we have a language of the people, we have a land of the people. Right? Very central. It's the central theme throughout the Bible is the promise of God to Abraham to give the land of Canaan. It's Canaan. We can debate the borders. What is it from the Nile to Damascus, or is it just a little tiny territory around Jerusalem? Can debate that. But it's clear that that is the focus of the Bible in its pitch. And if you look at the laws of the Bible, so many of them revolve around the land. They're focused only on Shemitah, 7th year, Jubilee, 50th year, first fruit, sacrifice, gleanings, specific to the land of Israel. Why was it then that Jews could survive without a land, even though having the land was at the core? It's an interesting contradiction, isn't it? In pagan society, the ancient Greeks, the Babylonians, and so on, especially for the Babylonians, when the city-state was the powerful entity, that god of that city-state was the god of the universe. When that city-state was destroyed by the other city-state next door, that god became the god of the universe. In other words, with your land is lost, your God is nowhere. The biblical concept, different. God is the God of all the universe. God is the one who causes the movement among all the nations, because the God of all the nations. God is the one who, if there's a disaster, it's not a foreign God who does it. is God, whatever the reasoning may be. So God has not been destroyed. So when Jerusalem is destroyed, God is not destroyed. It's God's actions, whether we like it or not. Certainly that's how they saw it. So as the land was lost, the people didn't lose their purpose. Other people's antiquity, the land is lost, the city is lost, the capital is lost, next guy's boss. That's from the biblical perspective, and then later rabbinic perspective. That's repeated and re-emphasized. And so we are able to survive without a land, still looking for the land as a focus. So think about it. So 2,000 years, we kept on in the prayer book every day, 3 times a day, restore the kingdom of David, rebuild Jerusalem. Return your presence to the city and the, right? All of that, emphasized 3 times a day, plus in the prayers, in the texts of the prayers leading up to the Amida and so on, and the Birkat HaMazon, yeah.
Were those the prayers that were used in the Babylonian exile?
Good question. Some of them may have started then, although the Babylonian exile, again, was short-lived. So it's only 70 years. So they're in the process of returning. It's not yet.
Would that have been a problem if you were exiled and you were here and you were talking about
Being back here.
Yeah.
So there are great debates because Jews are very comfortable in the land of Babylonia. They're very wealthy. And so there are great debates back and forth between the religious leadership, eventually the land of Israel and of Babylonia, about this. Are you allowed to live there or not? All right? What are you doing there? And they're saying, we have the Torah, Mashiach will come. When God will come, Mashiach will come, we'll all be happy together again. Till then, all right? All right, we want to have our cake and eat it too. But you can see though still, what happens at every, yeah, go ahead. Aramaic comes in, yeah. It's after the Babylonian conquest, where it's being used widely throughout the Middle East at that time period. It turns out that, and I said this, some references, they were still speaking Hebrew, not only Aramaic. So it had not replaced Hebrew yet as a spoken language. It still was the common language. This is a great question. Later, much later, it actually became the common spoken language. Some of the, New Testament, some of the phrases in the New Testament reflect the use of Aramaic. Some of the Kaddish prayer is in Aramaic. So it was in, but it didn't. All right, it didn't take over Hebrew for usage and anything else. The Talmud uses Aramaic for some of the discussions, but still, the Hebrew was predominant still. One other, yeah.
About the lost tribes.
Yeah.
Were they all lost?
The presumption is that the tribes are carried off 200 years before in the north, like about 200 years before the tribes in the south. They never had unity among them. They were too dispersed. They never had a solid dynasty. The kings were always being overthrown. So there was none of these uniting factors that the people in the south had. Only one group, the Samaritans, who were, the remnants of the people in the north, and some others brought in from the Assyrian invaders, but not genetic studies. They're pretty close to us, more than we admitted. They're pretty close to us. They preserved Hebrew. They preserved actually the Hebrew writing in an older alphabet than we used. They actually did that. So we used it. We kept on using it for a while. Switched over to what's called the Ktav Asheri, the Assyrian script. It's the block script that we're used to. The Samaritans kept the script with it, for example, Dead Sea Scrolls you'll see, or the Hebrew handwritten script carries a little bit of similarity still to it.
Why was Judah and some tribes around Judah stay together?
It's because they still had the Davidic dynasty and the temple, and that served as a unifying factor. The north didn't have the same. The north had its own sanctuaries, but not as powerful. didn't have, as I say, a continuous, a stable dynasty that sort of held as a factor to bring them together. Plus, they had another 200 years of the prophets teaching and looking at what happened at the north, seeing the disaster that fell in the north and starting to get the people in the south thinking about what they're doing. So that impact of the disaster in the north, and in particular also it had to do with the way that the Assyrians dealt with their captive peoples by scattering and dispersing them. The Babylonians did not disperse. They kept people in solid units. There was a better method for the captive peoples. And I think those are two practices. So what's left of them probably were absorbed. Those that were not carried away came down south, absorbed into the Jewish community, the Judean community, wandered off, maybe later blended in with Judeans as they came into different parts of the Babylonian and Persian Empire. Well, very problem. Anyway, I'm going to leave us off at this point and keep you in suspense. We'll go to the land of Israel, finish up with that, as we're starting to pull up against the timeline. So I'm going to follow up with that, and then next week then go into the idea of Torah. That's the second of the triumvirate that we have. We have the, start with the people, and the Torah, there's not as a book, this is what you follow, but as a whole system of thinking, and then finally get to the idea of God. And then we'll see about everything else. Okay, so we're going to go finish up with Adon Olam. You got it. Okay, I'm going to stop share. Go ahead. Go ahead. We'll wrap up with Adon Olam.
Adon Olam, Asher Malach, B'terem Kol, Yitzir Nivra, Led Nasa, V'chefsa Kol, Azai Melech, Shemo Nikra, V'yacharech Yichlach Levado, Yimloch Nora, Vehu Haya, Vehu Haveh, Vehu Yeh Batifara. Lord of the world, you reign alone. Before one thing was ever formed, and by your will all things were made. Your holy name, eternal King, and all in all should cease to be. Your reign alone, awesome one, who was and is, always will be, in glorious, eternal King. He is the one, eternal King.
Adon Olam. Okay, Shabbat Shalom to everybody. Shabbat Shalom.
Shabbat Shalom.
Shabbat Shalom. Yeah, I just have to watch the microphone. Okay.